Hi, my name is Daisy, and today we'll be uncovering water privilege in San Diego County. So, as for our introduction, access to affordable and reliable water service is often assumed to be equally available to all, yet in San Diego County, clear disparities remain. This project will examine how water privilege plays out across the region by investigating infrastructure response, political participation, and institutional water use. So here are some questions that the project aims to investigate. So as for history, let's go back to the early 1900s. This period shows how access to water in San Diego was shaped by the city's desire for power, strategic use of the law, and planning that intentionally left certain communities behind. The case I want to talk about is San Diego versus businessman Ed Fletcher, who ran the Cuyamaca Water Company and made big promises to deliver water even when he didn't actually have enough supply. But because he was one of the first to claim the land, he gained control over water sources. When the city tried to take control of the San Diego River, Fletcher pushed back. Why? Because more water meant more profit for him. This shows how private businessmen had more influence over water access than everyday residents. Even then, Fletcher kept interfering. He used to fake historical letter in court to try to win. This comes to show how those money and connections can manipulate the legal system to maintain control even at the expense of the public. Fast forward to today, low-income communities still face these consequences. This quote by Carol Lowe reminds us that these neighborhoods are not designed by accident, but as a result of systemic exclusion and illegal investments. Infrastructure issues and wealthier neighborhoods are often managed more effectively because their systems are built to handle disruptions, preventing them from escalating into catastrophic events. The city of San Diego, many low-income communities have been experiencing serious flooding, often because their stormwater systems were built decades ago based on outdated assumptions about how much rain we'd get. This isn't like planned flooding in areas like Mission Valley, which are built to handle overflow. This is often unplanned destruction in poor neighborhoods that were often built with no long-term vision or without proper planning, so it's no coincidence. And as home values decreased, those neighborhoods generated less tax revenue, justifying the city in investing in them less. So, how does voter turnout influence voter-related decisions such as rates? To shift my focus towards politics, I turn to Prop 218, also known as the Right to Vote on Taxes Act. It changed the California Constitution to give voters, specifically property owners, more control over local taxes and utility fees. As you can already assume, property owners had a large say in decision making when it came to rates. Prop 218 had a list of requirements in order for a vote to count, such as voter approval for taxes, for special taxes like those meant for water systems, a two-thirds vote is required. The Prop 218 also restricted how much local governments can charge for services like water, sewer, or trash unless those charges are directly tied to the service provided. And then the core issue before increasing utility rates, governments must notify all affected property owners and give them a chance to protest. If more than 50% of owners protest in writing, the increase fails. So while Prop 218 claims to promote fairness and transparency, it ends up reproducing privilege by legally empowering those who already have property, wealth, and finance and influence. This matters because decisions about water is something we all need, shouldn't only be made by those who own land. So how does Prop 218 look like in practice? The city in San Diego was expecting to see a 5.5% increase in their water bill starting May. A lot of renters are upset about this increase, and so they are using Prop 218 to go against this case. The issue is that property owners can only submit valid written protests against water rate increases. This means that renters are usually excluded, even if renters attend hearings, write letters, or vote in general elections. Their objections don't count unless they're also the listed property owner or the account holder with the water utility. So ultimately, Prop 218 embeds privilege into the process. Now, Let's look into who is able to consume and who is likely to conserve, especially when water is scarce. We're using this case to help us understand who gets the privilege of having more access to water. Public institutions are asked to sacrifice more, conserve more, and move faster, oftentimes with less access to water, and adopt strict water-saving rules such as limiting outdoor irrigation. Private institutions are allowed to delay, operate with more flexibility, and retain access to more water longer into a drought. So as for an example, we will look into the public university, UC San Diego, seeing how the responsibility for water conservation is distributed unequally between public and private institutions. As UC San Diego complies with conservation measure, they must also follow the year-round monitoring water-saving resources, some of which are interesting to say the least. So one of them being the request of drinking water, which in a hot place like California, I feel like people shouldn't be requesting a glass of water when we know it's an essential for areas like San Diego. Um, and then as well as the third one, this might sound like a green initiative, but it touches on basic hygiene, especially for sensitive and vulnerable guests. Conservation does not mean we should cut down on being clean. This is a clear example of how institutional privilege shields some from sacrifice while others are expected to carry the weight of conversation. So in conclusion, it comes to show that wealthy homeowners, private institutions, and publicly connected communities hold the tab in San Diego County. They have faster repairs, more say in rate decisions, and looser conservation rules, showing that water privilege follows wealth and power. Here are some future research directions that we can look into. My favorite one would be the third question, questioning who has the power to be heard in water governance. Why isn't community voice alone enough to influence water decisions? Thank you, and here are my citations.